I'm not gonna lie to you guys when I say this. I don't have a good intro planned out. I've been thinking of what it should be, but I can't find it. But honestly, let's hope that the rest of this video makes it so you don't really think about the intro as much, alright? Anyway, here's a video about the M4 Sherman. Uh, keep watching. Okay, bye bye. Okay, intro aside, the M4 Sherman medium tank was developed by the U.S. Army Ordnance Department in 1940, about a year or so before the U.S. would enter the war. Its predecessor, the M3 medium tank, also known as the M3 Lee, had a very rough start though. Its configuration was odd at the time. It's kind of like a Char B1, but kind of worse and lacking the armor. It had a 37mm main gun on, well, not main gun, but it was something to punch through lighter armor. And on the bottom, or in the hole, it had a 75mm casemate. Now, this 75mm would later make it to the M4 Sherman, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. However, the M3 Lee would see better combat during the Pacific Theater, where there were really no other tanks for it to fight, since the Japanese could only field maybe 5 or so tanks. Who knows? Okay, now before we actually start talking about the Sherman, let's talk about its prototype, the T6 Medium. It's basically, I mean, there's nothing much to talk about it for. It's what made the Sherman, obviously, but I will say it did obviously use some parts from the M3 medium tank, and that's really it. Another thing is, it was the first US tank to employ the 3-man turret crew. So yeah, that's also nice to hear. Now that I finally got that out the way, let's actually talk about the Sherman and its variants. So be prepared, there's a lot of them. The first variant we're going to go over is the M4 variant. It has a Continental R97 radial engine with a horsepower of about 300 to 450. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not too into engines, so. It took the 75mm M3 cannon from the M3 Lee and put it in the 3-crew turret that we talked about earlier with the T6. And this variant actually had a welded hole. Later subtypes include the M4 105, which gave it a 105mm howitzer for infantry support and for additional artillery support. Next variant on the list is the M4A1. Using the same engine as the M4, the only real difference is the fact that it uses a one-piece cast hull, giving it a rounded appearance. This model also had some variations to the turret, as some were seen with a mantlet with additional armor or a bare one. They would later upgrade it to the M4A1 76W, giving it a 76mm M1 cannon, allowing it to frontally pen Tiger tanks and wet ammunition stowage, making sure that the ammo wouldn't cook off if hit. Okay, taking a quick break from the Shermans, I promise this is quick. Let's talk about the Cat Killer, the 76mm M1 cannon. Produced before actually encountering the true German big cats, the 76 was first used by the M18 in 1944. However, it would take a little while before Shermans could use it. The 76mm was actually able to frontally pen most German tanks, like the Tiger or the Panther. And yes, it could front pen a Tiger, despite what Fury says. Our next variant of the Sherman is the M4A2 model. Now this one has some changes internally. One of the most prominent ones being a new diesel-powered engine. This being the General Motors twin G41 engine. Now this was the most exported Sherman model of all of them. The most prominent user of this variant was actually the USSR. And they used it to fight off German forces. The USMC also used it prominently down in the Pacific. Later subtypes include the M4A2 76W, where, alongside the M4A1 76W, gets a 76mm gun and wet ammo stowage to protect the ammo when hit. Now, our next model isn't a Sherman by naming, but instead by technicality, and that would be the M10 gun motor carriage, also known by its crews as the Wolverine. The M10 was essentially an M4A2 chassis with a brand new open-top turret, and with the addition of the 3-inch M7 gun, making it a formidable tank destroyer. Now, the typical Sherman was infantry support, and you wouldn't really use it in a tank fighting role. But if you really needed to take down a big cat, the Wolverine is always there to strike it down. Okay, back to actual Shermans. We're now on to the M43 variant, and this one brings many changes, such as a welded hull along with a one-piece cast nose, along with the brand new Ford GAA V8 engine, giving it additional horsepower from the maximum of 450 in the R97.5 to 500. Along with this upgrade also came its many subtypes, with the most notable ones being the M48376W HVSS, also known as the EZ8, which is the one most prominent in Fury, and the M483E2, being known as the Jumbo. Okay, now on to our final Shermans by technicality. We have the M10A1, which is an M10 but on the chassis of an M4A3. Meaning really only the engine changed with it. Now, the real big deal of this section is the M36 GMC, also known as the Jacksons by its tank crews. Now, the M36 would be the first US armored fighting vehicle that was in mass production to use the 90mm M3 gun. This 90mm was used in the anti-aircraft role before actually being installed on the tank. And this cannon actually later saw its way to the fierce M26 Pershing used during late war. The M36 was created on an M10A1 chassis, meaning it was basically just a big upgunned M4A3. The M36 would see its trial by fire during the Battle of the Bulge. The M36 also had two variants, the M36B1 being an M4A3 chassis and hull with an M36 turret on it. The second variant would be the M36B2, which was on the regular M10 hull, giving it the M4A2 chassis. Now for the last segment of the video, we're going to talk about the other kind of known Sherman variants. First off, we're going to talk about the T-34 Calliope. It was essentially an M4 Sherman with multiple rocket tubes attached to the top of the turret. It allowed for mobile rocket artillery along with its brother, the T-40 Whiz-Bang. Armed with a shorter load of rockets, but it packed a bigger punch, notably. Another variant of the Sherman that's lessly known, if that's even how you say it, is the Sherman Crocodile, armed with a flamethrower and trailer taken from the Churchill Crocodile. Only about 4 were made, and they mainly saw service around the end of the war. Anyway, if you did make it through all of that video, thank you for watching this. I threw this together throughout a day or so. Okay, anyway, goodbye.